soon, fingers crossed. All right, so we're a couple of minutes in. Maybe Sam, you can continue to let everyone in as they join. So good evening, everyone. We might kick it off. So just wanted to say thanks for joining us tonight, and obviously to discuss all things customer success and selling. So it's taken us a while to get to this stage, and basically, you know, we do plan to, as I mentioned, hold an in-person event as soon as this is possible. But until then, we obviously want to stay connected. You know, let's stay informed and continue to have fun at these community events. So the more people that we get together, the better. And you know, if you're new to the Customer Success Australia Meetup community, firstly, just wanted to say welcome. We're continuing to find new ways to connect each other and conduct these events over topics that you yourselves want to hear and that are of interest to you and your roles. So your feedback's always welcome, and feel free to reach out, LinkedIn, Meetup, email, whatever works for you. Okay, so I might jump to our next slide here. I wanted to start off today just by doing an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I join you today, the Kulin Nations and the traditional custodians of the lands of which you join us. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge their connection to land, sea, spirit and community, and extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait people joining us today. So hello again, my name is Simon, and I'm also joined as your other co-host here today by Sam, and we are together basically helping to run CSA at the moment and get you guys together and obviously track in a direction that's beneficial for all. So welcome. Just some general housekeeping again today, as if you've ever been to a group virtual event before. Please stay on mute just for the time being. We will have a bit of a Q&A session later on where, you know, I think the last event we used Slido for some questions. I think for this event, what we're going to do is we're going to allow you to take yourselves off mute and get it a bit more conversational. So get a bit of banter there, have a bit of, ask your question, have your say, whatever you want to do there, feel free. And our guests will be more than happy to engage. Just for reference, we did pass out a bit of a survey earlier on, and Sam will have put that into the comments area there. Feel free to access that. We're just asking a couple of questions in regards to what you think about customer success and selling. And we'll just get a bit of an understanding of what the feel is in the room. So we'd encourage you to do that, and it'd be just great context for what we're discussing today. Just a bit of an agenda. We've done a bit of a welcome today. We're then going to move on to the panel discussion, have a bit of a Q&A session, and we feel like a bit of a breakout room worked out really well last time. So we'll break out into maybe 5 or 6 people per room after this, and just give you an opportunity to network with each other and say hello. So generally about this meetup, if you haven't been to a CSA event before, our mission is to foster an environment of collaborative growth for customer success professionals in Australia. Our vision is basically a flourishing CS community where members have opportunities to learn and connect with each other, to basically grow from each other there. The occurrence, so we try to do these, every 2 months at the latest, just to try and keep everyone together, get the feedback from the last event and incorporate that as we go through. And the format is typically at the moment panel discussions, talks, and general networking events. So when we can get those in-person events, that's what we're really striving for here. Just a big shout out to our sponsors for tonight. So Yellowfin, we wanted to host them, have them host us in person at their beautiful office in the Melbourne CBD. But for tonight, they have definitely helped to make this possible. So a big thank you to the team there, and hope to have an event in person in the future there. With all of that said, and a big welcome to everyone here tonight, I might pass it over to Sam to introduce our guests tonight.
Thanks, Simon, and welcome again, everyone. Thanks so much for being here tonight, and we really looking forward to connecting with everyone in the breakout rooms, and hope to see you at the next CSA meetup. So today we've got on the panel Emma Urli, who is the CX Director at Yellowfin BI. Welcome, Emma. We've got Brendan Tremble, who is a Principal Consultant at CX Loop and also has other few things on the run, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. And we've also got Marlon Herft, who is the Director APAC Customer Success at Udemy. So really diverse panel tonight from different areas of different sides of business and doing different things with different backgrounds. So we think we'll have some really good conversation tonight around CS and selling, which is a topic a lot of people were telling us they wanted to have covered in the last meetup. So we're happy that we were able to listen to what you're interested in and put that on for this event tonight. So maybe if I could just start with an introduction on the side of the panelists tonight. And Emma, if we can start with you, then to Brendan and Marlon. Tell us a bit about yourselves, your journey into customer experience and customer success, and then just about the business that you work for at the moment and your customers that you're working with. So we can all have a bit of perspective of where you're coming from when we jump into the panel discussion.
Sure. I'll try to keep it fairly sweet. That was a lot of background information you were wanting. So I guess from my background, I'm actually probably more of a technical background. I was a product consultant at a previous company before Yellowfin, but then at Yellowfin started here sort of 7 years ago. My transition into CS, I guess, was quite organic. Or always been a client-facing person, but as our company sort of grew and developed, we just sort of organically kind of merged into these different types of roles and, and built those foundations. So I'm at Yellowfin. I've been at Yellowfin for over 7 years now. Yellowfin, for those who don't know, is a business intelligence sort of data analytics software application. It's a subscription-based product, which very much means that our world revolves around CS in this sort of day and age. Yeah, I think that's probably the quickest overview for you guys. Is that enough?
Okay. Over to you, Brendan.
Thanks, Sam. I think like most people here and Emma, I kind of transitioned into customer success almost by accident. I started my career about 18 years ago in sales and account management. About 8 years ago, I moved more into a project-based sales role. And that kind of really evolved when we moved into tech, into that kind of customer success role. And then over the last 5 years, kind of merging that customer success and sales together, to where in the last 2 years we actually formed CX Loop, which is a customer consultancy that helps businesses look at everything to do with customer, people, process, and technology. So yeah, really keen to have a bit of a discussion tonight and hear some input and hear different ways people are approaching the topic, but I think it's really relevant at the moment.
Brendan.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Emma. Hey guys, I'm Marlon. So my background is essentially sales and go-to-market leadership across, well, I'm in Melbourne, but across Asia Pacific. I am, as I was introduced, I'm the Director for Customer Success across Asia Pacific for Udemy. My foray into customer success is actually quite new. It's not, but it wasn't by accident. It was quite intentional. But up until, I guess, about 1.5 years ago, I had been in a sales or sales leadership role in one way, shape, or another, whether that was an account manager or whatever it was, and actually applied to Udemy for this role because through contacts that I have and getting to know the organization, it was the organization I wanted to come and work for. And then when I got an understanding of the people that were here and the organization as it was, decided to see if I could get the opportunity to work for this organization and essentially completely pivot my career. So that's how I come to you guys today in terms of a bit of a novice, I'd like to think, when it comes to customer success. So thank you, Sam and Simon, for having me. It's, it's great to be here. If only we could do this face to face, hopefully sooner than later.
Fantastic. Thanks, Marlon. Right, so let's jump into the panel discussion. I think we saw there that our three panelists have a really great diversity in where they've come from and the relationships that they'll have with sales and CS. So let's jump into the first question. So I'll preface this with thanks for everyone who's jumped into the Google Doc there the Google form there to let us know a bit about your experience with CS and sales. So asking the question, are CSMs responsible for leading renewals in your business? We've got roughly half the people saying yes, half saying no, and one saying not sure. So with that, we'll lead into the first question. So Emma, if I can pose this to you to start, can you tell us about the role you've seen CSMs take in renewals and upsells in organisations you've been involved with? And maybe if you could, and all of you sort of go into a bit of what you've seen, what's worked well and what hasn't worked well.
Yeah, sure. I guess, like a lot of companies, we've probably changed our strategies. So where we sort of sit at the moment at Yellowfin with this is CS is a separate department from sales, but we do work very closely with them. So for our perspective, the CSMs at Yellowfin are still responsible for renewals that are, let's say, simple. And then when things get more complicated and there's more of a sales necessity to it, like a salesperson would sort of come in and help with that. I think we've still got a long way to go in terms of perfecting and smoothing out some of those grey areas. But for the most part, I guess where things work really well is when your pricing is simple. And that's even sort of something that as software companies, we've got to think about the way we price our product, the way you invoice it, charge it, etc. So one of our options for licensing is a user-based model. That's a really simple conversation to have. How many customers or how many users do you need? This is your price. So those sorts of conversations are really easy for a CSM to be able to have. The customer has a need and there's a price attached to that. It gets more complicated when there's some sort of customization to it and there's, I don't know, a lot of negotiation. We, I guess, we want to be the trusted advisor for all of our customers. And I think that's what everyone probably should be striving for. So we want to be on the same team as our customer and be just like kind of pretty much part of their game plan. And if we're sort of caught up negotiating something that's quite commercial, that kind of can taint that. So that's why we do have that sort of sales step in at those particular times. Yeah, I feel like that's probably, and I guess the other area that, I guess if we think about upsells and that sort of growth element, if you can be that trusted advisor for your customers, you can really help, I guess, organically, if I say that again, they actually have a need for something and you're able to provide that option. And again, there might be a price attached to that. That's a really easy way to be able to do an upsell. But if you're trying to, under some pressure, you've got a KPI to hit for the sake of hitting it kind of thing, whether it benefits clients or not, that doesn't work as well from what I've seen. Hand across to maybe Brendan or Marlon. See their thoughts.
I suppose I'm almost the exact opposite. Well, my current role in consulting, I work with lots of different clients, but if I flick back to my last role in CS, where I oversaw sales and customer success, we actually had it more, sales was set up as the BD function, where they weren't as technical as what the CS team were. So when I actually got to the sales process, yes, the sales team were bringing in the leads and doing a lot of initial conversations, but we were actually introducing the customer success team then as part of almost like a pre-sales team to kind of validate it. And particularly then in that post-sales, when I first joined Think, and it was a procurement platform, we did have CS and account managers, but within about 3 months, we actually merged the two and got rid of a few, because what we found was when we did it properly and the CSMs were going in with legitimate reasons to speak to people about what the system was going to do and how it was going to do it and future features, and especially if they understood that renewal and churn rate, they were able to actually upsell the customers a lot easier and have a better success rate than the account managers, who customers just perceive them as the sales guys who just wanted to renew and get their commission. And then we had the support team who are completely separate again, who kind of took a bit of the weight off the customer success. So we almost used the CS guys as a sales channel. And I'd say while we didn't necessarily put the metrics onto the CS team, as far as KPIs, we were heavily reliant on them. And actually for the sales team, we're heavily reliant on them to make sure that they hit their targets and got their bonuses as well.
Thank you, Brendan. Marlon, maybe over to you, coming from the perspective of quite a large organisation.
Yeah, I guess we're considered. I don't know if we're large or not. I don't really think we're that big. We're about 1,000 employees, so it's not small, but you know, I guess, but we do have some big customers. But to the question, I think I agree with Emma and Brendan. I think there's some middle ground there, but it also ultimately comes down to the goals of the organization and the intent of the organization. Speaking on behalf of the business I represent and my team, we're responsible for gross retention, logo retention, and net retention. Ultimately, that's for the region, but what that means for our customer. And then when it comes to each CSM, essentially their portfolio. So that include, up until recently, my team and I were also even running the renewals for our customers. So we were doing the negotiating, we were doing the paperwork, we were dealing with procurement, all of it. Up until very recently, where we've had someone come in as a renewals manager to help us in that process. But from a renewals perspective, that still comes under our remit as customer success for Udemy. I do think, though, ultimately, you know, what does that mean for a customer? I think there's that, you need a balance, right? It's not that you can't be, people pay Deloitte millions, and they're considered as trusted advisors, right? So, you know, I sometimes go, well, you know, as customer success professionals, just because we're, you know, not necessarily asking for money or selling, but if we're revenue driven, it ultimately means that we're working for an organization that is also looking to grow and is also looking to improve. So for us and our teams, what we look at, though, based on those metrics, if we look at the health of our customer, and, you know, do we have the metrics that we're measuring ourselves on? If we're doing a great job there, then we're doing our best to become that trusted advisor. And when we are looking for that organic growth or that renewal, in the ideal world, it becomes no factor. Now, is that happening? No, that's, you know, that's almost utopia, right? There's different shades of gray, so to speak, in us achieving there. But that's our intent when we approach it. And that's how we're kind of measured. I'm not sure if I've answered the question, Sam.
Oh no, I'd say you have them, Marlon. And in terms of, I think there's the bigger picture there in terms of, you know, what we're all here to do as CSMs is, you know, we're here for retention, and then I guess here we're sort of more talking about the function and the practice and the administrative task of renewals.
Yeah. So look, yeah, and in terms of the admin and the task and the additional pressure. For example, running renewals while trying to, you know, focus on customer health or adoption or advocacy and all the other things that we have to do. It was absolutely a lot in terms of just hours in the day. But you know, as a metric for measurement, I do think there is room in the CS world for us to be, you know, revenue driven, so to speak, not at the cost of your commission, so to speak, but definitely for the benefit of the organization you work for. We are advocates for our customers, but ultimately they don't pay our wages.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brendan, maybe if I could jump back to you, just having, you know, being in the CX consulting space, is that something that you see, you know, sort of a correlation between CSMs owning that responsibility for renewal and the size of the business, as Marlon was just saying, you know, he's moved out that function to a renewals manager. Is that something that you see larger businesses tend to have someone who's more focused on that within the CS space compared to smaller businesses, or is it more so around, you know, what the company's trying to drive for their customers?
I think if you look back, I don't think it has as much of an effect on the size, but rather the maturity and the age of the business. Because I think you've got those really fundamental pillars that in the kind of silos that when you come to older business who've been around for a long time, and you kind of look at the perfect Marlon touched on Deloitte, or if you look at Qualtrics or and compare them, look at Qualtrics and compare them to the likes of Cisco. So Qualtrics, new company, they've got a lot more kind of upbeat about themselves. They kind of got the CSMs who are more about the actual selling, trying to get the renewals and focusing on that. Where you compare that to the older Cisco's, who they have their account managers, they have the renewal managers, they have the customer service team. They have the kind of, each individual role has a very specific requirement and responsibility within the business. And I think that comes down to the maturity of the organization, because I think as well, when you look at CSMs as a whole, because I know when I got first going into my first CSM role, I got a phone call off someone in my network said, like, can you come and work for us? We've just opened up a head of customer success. And I was like, what's customer success? I've never heard of it. And I've been working in tech for quite a while. And I'm like, oh, well, this is what we're going to do. It's like, so account management. It's like, no, it's customer success. It's completely different. I said, right, okay. So I took a leap of faith and jumped in, and then quickly realized it has the same approach, just the same kind of responsibilities in a lot of cases, particularly in new businesses. But it really comes down to the business itself, what way they've structured it. And when we talk to clients, that's one thing we'll look at, kind of the maturity of the business and what they already have in place, or well, yeah, what's already there. Because if you try and replace it and try to say, right, you need to get rid of these guys, get rid of these guys, get rid of these guys, because CSMs can replace it all, they'll laugh you out of the room. Likewise, if you try and suggest you change people's title, people don't want their titles changed. So it's a bit of a vague answer, because I think there's still a lot of uncertainty of what a CSM does to a lot of businesses. And I think this is a perfect kind of a breakdown. You look at even the likes of Emma and Marlon, and you have that clear divide between sales and CSMs with Emma, but then you have Marlon and his team, which is more of that kind of CSMs are the sales guys as well. And he has that sales approach. So yeah, it's a bit of a long-winded answer to a bit of everything.
Brad, I think that was a big thing that came out of our last meeting on sort of this meetup on the state of CS in Australia. Is every CSM seems to have a different PD, so it's it's an ever evolving trade, and again a really interesting space to play in, and why it's great for us to all come together to have these conversations. On to the next one. So Emma, I'll throw this one back to you if that's all right. We like everyone to try and come away with somewhat of a tip or trick or something that they can take out of these meetups and take into their day-to-day work. So what would you say CSMs can do to effectively sell or renew, whether that's partnering with sales, like similar in your organization, or if they're having to do that independently?
Well, I suppose like my biggest tip, or what makes people quite successful at Yellowfin, like being a data-driven sort of or data analytics company, what's critical for us is like how the depth that we understand how our customers are using our product. We really need to make sure that we're understanding, what are they reporting on, how regularly are they using this, like what benefit are they getting out of Yellowfin. That's sort of, I guess, deeper sort of dive into how they use product is just like, it's critical. It feels like a bit of common sense, but sometimes people need reminding about it. But yeah, we just all want to be able to make sure we can really understand that, like the benefits that our product is being able to give. And that can help you with the next customer, right? The new customer that you're onboarding, and you can be like, oh, well, it's such and such, they do this and this, and can really help you like fast track that next customer to their success. And I guess from my own personal experience, like I do have quite a technical background, a data science degree and stuff. So I kind of find that that's so advantageous for my particular product that I can be quite that subject matter expert. So when I'm talking to the customers, I don't always need to get support involved or a consultant or someone more technical necessarily. And again, that kind of can really fast track it. So I certainly would be advising everyone, we're all working for different products, but be an expert in that product. And if you're not, I guess if you're not there yet, like one day when we're not in lockdowns and such things, but like pick a really friendly customer, sit beside them for a day, do their job, use your product in anger the way they do it, and really kind of help sort of emphasize, well, I guess, understand your sort of own tool so that you can really help their success in the future. That'd be my biggest tips, I guess. What do you reckon, Brendan?
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think that's, you kind of come back to the title of like customer success. It's like the whole point of your role is you want the customer to be successful. And the only way you can do that is by understanding your customer and what they really want from it. Because I think that's one thing that I always kind of struggled when I got into the role, was it was taking the sales out of it and having that more relationship with them to be able to understand why, not only kind of how they use the product, why they're using it, how they're using it, and what's going to keep them using it, and working with them then on future developments. Because I think that's one of the probably the critical parts, is understanding the capability and future kind of what can the product do, not just in 12 and 24 months, but in 5 years time, and keep them engaged. But as long as you have that ability to take the sales out of it, because it's not about just necessarily selling to just get the dollar figure, it's about bringing them on the journey and make sure they're using your platform successfully. And that's what my approach was to the role. How about you, Marlon?
Yeah, look, I think, look, I agree with both of you, Emma and Brendan. It's a matter of the one thing we're kind of currently the team's talking about is, what problem are we solving? So beyond the value, so beyond adoption, beyond usage, what problem are we solving, and can we have that conversation kind of at each level? So, me understanding, Brendan, what's important for you in the role and how you utilize Udemy, whether you're an individual contributor, a frontline manager, or the CEO, how does it impact? How is what we do impact those things? And can we, ideally, tangibly demonstrate that in a way that's kind of irrefutable? And again, it's going back to that advisor sort of thing, right? Where, if you're able to sort of have those conversations and build up your own knowledge, not only 100% agree, Emma, on your product, but also some discovery on that organization. So when we're going into, a business review, have we read the latest information? If it's a big, floated organization, we'll read the annual report and get a sense of what's going on in there, who's saying what, so we can then try and leverage that with other customers that we may be solving problems for, and then bring that to, say, in your case, Brendan, to go, hey, here's what we're learning from this, or here's what we've heard with regards to, your retention goals or your expansion goals or any of those sorts of things. And how do you plan to look at it? And where does learning sit within that? And based on what we're doing within your engineering or your certification or your D&I program, how can we help you with that expansion? So again, it's sort of all of the above, but really utilizing the skills you have, because the insight we get to benefit them while also ensuring you're going to give something, right? So beyond what your product's doing, being an advisor means you can give advice, not necessarily always about utilizing your product or advocating for your product or adopting for your product or the roadmap for your product, actually giving some industry knowledge or industry insight about them.
That's a great point, Marlon. I think it's really critical, and it helps, it'll just help all of your conversations and like from CS sort of related renewals, growth, that sort of thing. But when the customer knows that you've sort of done that research on them, like they trust you sort of so much more, and you're taking them on that journey.
It's not rocket science, a lot of this, right? It's, if you think about how you'd like to be engaged with and how you would like to be, consulted to or somewhat sold to, that really needs to be the approach, humility and empathy and understanding and discovery around it.
Well, I think you also touched on it, Marlon. Nobody wants to be sold to. They don't want to be they don't want somebody coming in saying, hey, you need to buy this because you're going to be able to do this. They want to, hey, you guys need to utilize this and have this as part of the suite of uses that you actually have in front of you, because I think that's where they get the best use out of it. Because even we always said, never use the word sell. Like I rarely, if ever, use sell or buy. We talk to customers about improving, or we talk about customers acquiring, but never buying or kind of. It's just for them. It's just more about them actually having to hand over money.
Yeah, and again, I agree, Brendan. But also for us, when we get to that point, we're not scared to have that conversation though either. It's not a matter of going, oh, we're not salespeople, don't tarnish it with that brush. It's like, well, the business we work for needs to be profitable, and through that we sell stuff. So, there's no point hiding that. It's a matter of, again, the approach we're taking around it.
Great, and thanks to everyone who's chiming in the comments. A lot of agreement going around with what we're saying here and what we're hearing. And just to touch back on what everyone thinks here is, asking the crowd, do you feel comfortable selling to customers as CSMs? But 3/4 saying yes and 1/4 saying no. So for those quarter that are not so comfortable, I think for me, they're the key takeaways that Marlon, Emma, and Brendan are talking about. There is intimate knowledge of your customer and the space they play in and how they use the product, and which is the way that we really help become the trusted advisor that we're all striving to be, which I think leads quite well into our next question here, which is, how do CSMs balance commercial responsibilities, and if they have remuneration or compensation based on that, how do you balance us while striving to be a trusted advisor? And do we sort of lose that if we're coming asking for money? I'll throw it to the three of you, whoever wants to take that.
Oh, well, I feel like we'll probably all have pretty different opinions on this one. It's interesting. So we actually, probably 2 years ago, we removed commissions from all of our CSMs. And you know, because of the way we value what we want the CSMs to be able to be doing, and that trusted advisor status is critical for us. And so that's why we do have that strong partnership with sales, to sort of have that responsibility. Don't want to say we hide behind it, Marlon, but like it's, but you know, like we did actually, you know, like we did completely change, like I guess, a different direction to what you guys have done, which is interesting. You know, we still have KPIs we've got to meet, but there's not a bonus attached to that. There's just kind of, I guess there's perks attached to it in terms of, you know, team events and days off and bits and pieces, but not sort of a bonus sort of structure that comes through anymore. So we're trialing that. So far, I think it's working really well. The team's still been really driven to hit their KPIs and overall as a team succeed. But it does sort of take I guess what we found when we had commissions attached to things is that our CSMs were too focused on the renewals. In terms of like just month to month, this is what I've got to do this month. And they stopped thinking bigger picture about what the overall strategy was and like the longer term sort of goals. So yeah, I guess we're trialing this. So far, I like it.
That's good.
Yeah, look, I agree. I'm thinking back to when I mentioned that we got rid of the account managers and kind of made CSMs solely. Our sales guys were all on commission, but there was a clear pay gap between the sales guys and the CSMs as far as base rate. So we always kind of looked at it as, like, your sales role is you're paid X to go out and generate business, and we reward you in the business you bring in. But with CSMs, your role is this, and we'll pay you well for that. So it's like a 30% pay gap between the two, but it was kind of on par, where if the CSM or if the sales guys were doing what they're supposed to do, they'll come in a little, probably a bit ahead of the CSMs. But likewise with the CSMs, we gave them one incentive towards the end of the year was, if the business does well, you do well. And we gave everyone it was like a 5K bonus, I think a 10K bonus at the end of the year. But what it did is, because it was only once a year that they got the bonus, it took that out of the whole concept. Yes, it was nice to have on a kind of December payment, great. But it wasn't all about the here and now, trying to get involved in the sale or trying to make sure the sale closed, or even though it was actually making sure that it took away that sense of urgency for them. And they became that advisor working with the customer to kind of let it happen when it needed to happen, and keeping the customer because we wanted to keep the customer, rather than just about, I need to hit my figures this month to be able to get my bonus.
Yeah. So for us, I guess, I don't know if I preface this. We have a sales organization, a massive sales organization that are essentially the acquisition arm of the go-to-market team. And then we kind of sit in the middle, straddling it somewhat. And there is incentive for CS and sales to actually team up when it comes to upsell within an existing customer. So the business has done that to ensure that it isn't, that's your job, that's my job. There's no delineation between that for the benefit of either party, and ultimately the success of the customer, so to speak. For us, what we've done is, and again, we've probably been able to scale it a little bit more as a business, but some of my team are on here, so they can happily speak up if I get this wrong or they think I'm misrepresenting. But I think for us, we do it in a way that rewards personal effort, but also really rewards the team, both as a region and then globally as well, because we've got a one team approach for all of us CS folks at Udemy. And, you know, so if we hit our goal, or the global team hits their goal, then everyone is bonused for it. So there is that revenue aspect for it, but it is not like a sales comp plan where it's 50-50 and it is all about that acquisition. So for us, it's closer to what you're describing, Brendan, where there is a variable component, but it's made up of multiple components that reward in as well as individual behavior. Those tenets I spoke to earlier around gross retention, net retention, logo retention, those are all the benchmarks for a customer success organization to be, successful, right? So we're measured from that perspective, and that's sort of what we benchmark our, regional and global achievement on. So yeah, I think we're somewhere in the middle. But again, I guess you would say in terms of structure for our business, my boss, who is the Global Vice President of Customer Success, sits in the same line as the head of sales, and both of them report to the president. So in terms of structure and, delineation, the CS at Udemy has a real seat at the table. And I think it's because of the way we're measured, but I wouldn't for a minute I wouldn't sit here and say that diminishes us from our ability to be a trusted advisor. I think what we find is when we are a very good trusted advisor, our customers grow. And, and by grow, I mean, they spend more, right? And they'll go to a longer term, or they'll go for, closer to wall and those sorts of things. And when we're not doing that properly, they don't. There's so much choice in any field you're in now. If the CS organization isn't really buttoned up and squared away and know what they're up to, and really enthusiastic about, humility and empathy and success of their customer, you just won't win.
That's a good point.
Well, I think then on that note, we'll open it up to the audience for questions. Rosanna, I think you dropped in the chat there that you had a question.
Yes, please. Yeah, so I'm got an expanding team, and that's why I'm here in Singapore, but joining in Australia Customer Success. We've got lots of junior people across Asia Pacific. And I wanted to know how you guys upskill people quickly enough, because it's very hard to talk the same language as somebody, your client, who's been in that business for 15 years when you are 3 years out of school yourself. And I don't find that a playbook gives anybody really, no one reads them properly anyway. So yeah, how do you manage it?
That's funny, Rosanna. We're trying to update all our playbooks at the moment, and I have the same concern that no one's going to read it. They will, I'm sure. It's a really good question. It's because it's a tough one when someone doesn't have that life experience as well. I guess something that we do is we use our own product for our own day-to-day stuff. I guess a lot of things at Yellowfin are done within our own internal Yellowfin instance. So that helps people get that sort of product exposure to it to become experts in that field. But I guess, as I mentioned before, I really like to be able to, I want people to work with the customers and pretty much get the customers to show them how they use it day to day as well. Don't know if anyone's got any fresh ideas though, because I'd love them too.
I think it's an interesting one. I've got to put it out there. So I partly own a recruitment company as well. So we specialize in CS, CX and process improvement project management. So we do actually do a lot of those kind of webinars and talks on scaling teams and growth and kind of bringing it back to that. And I think it's interesting when you have those businesses who are going through those rapid growth and you need to bring in talent, and it gets to a pinnacle point of where you can upskill people to a certain point at a certain pace, but then you have to kind of cap that and bring in people from the outside to be able to actually compensate and train them as well. Because one thing businesses do really badly is they try to bring in 5 or 6 CSMs and they have 1 or 2 senior people with experience, and all of a sudden they're being stretched to the hill to be able to compensate. But I think that is the important part on that upskilling, where people have come from and the background that they bring to it. And some of the best CSMs I've seen are kind of fresh, and they come in and they're hungry and they're really keen to kind of get to know the environment that they're going to be working in. But do they have the life experiences to work with the customers as well at the same time? Depends on the product you're working with, of course. Because I look where the last 2 tech companies that I worked with one was a procurement company and one was a safety system. And that was really difficult to bring in junior people and kind of be able to train them up, because they needed that finance experience, or they needed kind of the safety side to be able to grow with it. So it really depends. But yeah, at the same time, broadening their experiences and training in different areas, I think find being really relevant to kind of make sure they're trained in what your customers know is just as important, rather than just focus on CS training. If you're, sorry, Rosanna, what industry are you in? It's probably a better question.
We're in market research.
Yeah,
so
okay.
it's a bit unique, but we have an online platform that people have to learn how to use our databases and charting tools and things, BI.
Fun. So you and Emma should have a chat, because I think you guys will align fairly well.
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's hard to have that credibility. We can teach people functionally how to use the site and train people how to make a chart, of course, but to have the credibility to talk to them about then their research projects that they're doing, you have to have a certain experience.
I actually had sorry, Emma, I had a bit of a follow-up question to that as well, from Rosanna's question there, and to Emma's point, too, about getting together your playbooks, making sure that people who are being onboarded are understanding of that information, and never mind getting them to read it in the first place. Do any of you have any experience, or have you tested out having some sort of test or product exam at the end of your onboard period to determine whether or not the playbook's been effective?
Yeah, we do. Sorry, I'm just laughing at my team. So when you join us, I will shamelessly plug this. I'm actually looking for 2 people for the team. So if you know anyone that wants to join either a scaled customer success team or an enterprise customer success team, please reach out. Rosanna, my colleague and dear friend and teammate Sophie, who's on here, Sophie Bailey, is actually in Singapore. So there you go. But so for us, when we start with a 30, 60, 90-day plan, that's all kind of very tactical, drink the Kool-Aid virtually in recent years. And then depending on where the new starter is and what they think, they've actually got a demo back to us on, we try to make it as lighthearted as possible, and no one likes really doing role plays, but it really gives us a level set on where we think that person is in their awareness and ability to kind of onboard a new customer and deliver reporting and the various things that have to do with the platform. And then from there, we just give them some feedback. Most of the time they nail it, and then just go, so from here, we should look at this or look at that. And then we kind of begin to send them on their way. So it's not a test as such, as it more, I don't know how, the best way to describe it would just be probably just a bit of a team meeting where the newbie, shows us what they're doing and where they're at in their journey with us, and then gives us a sense from a feedback. We give them a sense from a feedback perspective on what's working for them and what isn't, and what they can do. But it tends to be pretty good from a bonding perspective as well. They tend to be, they got to get quite vulnerable. We have to create, some psychological safety for them, because it's always intimidating to, role play or demonstrate to your peers. It tends to be easier with a customer or a complete stranger. So we find it's, one of the side effects to it, so to speak, is a good way to help build our, care and awareness for each other.
Big fan of that idea.
Yeah, a big fan. We don't currently sort of have a way of testing or anything like that, but I do really like that role play idea. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's just picture any onboarding that you would do, Emma or Brendan, and just go, 4 or 5 main points that you want them to hit for that process, and then you just, run a Zoom and off you go. It's pretty good.
Well,
assuming you could do that for like a lot of different areas as well, right? Your onboarding of a new customer, your business reviews and success planning, and all of that. That's a good. Sorry, Brendan, I interrupted you.
No, good. No, it reminded me of my sales days. I used to say the same. If the sales guys could half pitch me, they'll do fine to a customer.
Are there any other questions in the audience?
Feel free to take yourselves off mute and ask away.
Okay. Hey, Ocean here. So my organization recently moved away from renewals as part of our compensation. And I guess the thought process behind that was renewals is more of a lagging indicator. And as an organization, we would rather focus on more of a leading indicator because let's say in the last quarter where the renewal happens, there's only so much that you can do to save it. If they have made up their mind, to churn or to move away, that's about it. However, if we look at things like data-driven stuff, like, regarding their adoption and their journey, that's where, a customer success person can have more of an impact, and those would be the leading indicators that we should focus on. So just, want to hear more, I guess. What do you all think about that? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I'm an advocate for that, the whole renewal. And as I mentioned earlier, I kind of looked at the CSM role as your job is to make sure the customers are happy. And if they're happy, they're going to renew. If they're not happy, they're not going to renew, and you haven't done your job. And coming back to that kind of extra utilization, particularly if you've got a suite of functionality in your system where you have to kind of upsell continuously, or you've got a lot of different options for them. I kind of go away from that model in recent years, where particularly a lot of SaaS businesses now are looking at basically a kind of, well, you've got your different pricing models depending on small, medium, large, or entry level. But I don't really like the whole modular approach, sales approach. So yeah, I don't have as much experience in that one. We always kind of just gave, if you were a customer, you had access to our products, and we charge you one rate. The problem came when customers wanted to pay less and they wanted to kind of cut functionality, but we didn't allow it.
Yeah, I guess I really agree with that. I think you don't want to have the renewal be the first time you've spoken to a customer for the last 6 months or something like that, because that's when you get blindsided by the churn or something. So having those other ways of being able to have those indicators of, their success or not success, and so we want to make sure we've got our finger on the pulse in terms of, is their onboarding experience going well from the beginning, and again, we're kind of always wanting to, I guess it's one thing for our perspective to think it's going well, but really putting ourselves in their shoes to make sure we're still solving that problem is, pretty critical.
I think it's interesting when you break it down to the different types of products and services and the customers. When you say CSM, how many customers you're looking after? Because I think that was one of the events I went to, well, I say last year, 2 years ago now. And that was one of the topics of conversation of how many customers should a CSM have. And then that kind of led on to this kind of topic of, well, okay, if you have too many customers, are you then a firefighter where you're just putting out the fire when things go bad? Or do you kind of limit the number of customers you have so you can be proactive and you can monitor on things like Mixpanel and see how much their usage is going up or down, to kind of have that upstream approach on whether they're going to churn, if there's dropping usage over kind of 2 or 3 months, to be proactive about it. So again, it kind of comes back to the model you guys have set up in your own business, and being able to do that effectively as well, I think is important. So if they're changing the comm structure to be around that, there has to be the ability for the team to be able to have that upstream approach and be able to manage that effectively as well, without kind of having those indicators.
Hi everyone. I have a question from the other side. I actually have just been offered my first customer success manager role and sort of wondering about it. I come from a technology background, technology training and then adoption. And so I'm kind of like, so maybe I just would ask, what would you say do you like about the role, like doing this sort of a role, and what's the shit part?
How long do you have, Melinda? On both sides.
Yeah.
Can I ask what type of role or what type of business it is?
Well, it's another technology company. So it would be, I mean, I was listening about knowing the product inside out, and I think I like to understand how things work as a end user, but I couldn't care less about the stuff that's going on behind. So, but I'd be happy to chase up for other people when that sort of stuff goes on.
Look, I suppose from my side, I think it's an interesting approach, because I'd be the same, where I'm one of these kind of techie people who I've always kind of understood how things work. And I enjoy that kind of conversation and that kind of user experience and what can impact it. But what I also kind of notice is when you get into the role, and I think a lot of CSMs, if you're doing your job really well, you're talking to the dev team and the tech team quite a lot. And you're going to have that understanding then of what's possible, what's not possible, and kind of how things can work. And you start learning that very quickly of the product, particularly if you're focused on one product for the next X number of years, you become the expert in it. But I also think one of the nice things that I found about CSMs, again, depends on the industry and whether you're coming in at like a B2C level or you're dealing with enterprise. Clients are generally fairly tolerant if you give you time to get up to speed and you're kind of learning with them, and make sure you actually listen to their pain points and where their frustrations are. And one tip I always say to my guys is never make promises. Never promise what you can't deliver. Because I think that's one of the biggest failure points in the CSM is where they go out to a customer and they listen to all these problems like, I'm going to go away and I'm going to fix them for you. I'm going to make sure they're fixed within the next 3 months. And you go back to the dev team, it's like, yeah, we'll fix them in 18 months time. Like we've got a roadmap for 12 months. And that's where you lose credibility. So it's kind of never overpromise, but always kind of listen to the customer. But remember, the customer doesn't pay your bills, the business does. So you have to have that fine balance as well of being their friend, being their advisor, but understanding as well the kind of the limitations of that. They're not necessarily your friend.
Yep.
Like that's probably the best advice I can give for someone starting at it.
Perfect. Thanks, Brendan.
I was just going to add, when I did say to be a product expert, I did mean from the user experience. Like, I guess you don't need to know how the code works in the background by any standard. Just certainly put yourself in the customer's shoes and how they need to use it, and you'd be definitely a strength.
Cool.
In saying that, that last procurement company I worked with, we had so many integration problems, I became an expert in MuleSoft. So if anyone needs MuleSoft advice, I'm here.
Brendan, thanks all, and thanks very much to the audience for jumping in with your questions there. I'll throw back to Simon, who'll put us in some breakout rooms so we can get the chance to mingle, network, and have a chat with some of the people here.
Absolutely. And just before we do that, Sam, just on the back to the feedback survey, or the survey that we did earlier, in response to the question around, do you think being a trusted advisor there, if selling to your customers, 50% of people said that no, they don't think you would stop being a trusted advisor if you do sell to your customers. 28%, or 1/4 approximately, said they're not really sure, and 21%, so 1/5, pretty much said yes, we do think there's a risk of not being a trusted advisor. So I hope we've all taken away something from today and understanding a bit more about the different perspectives that we all sort of hold, depending on what's appropriate to our business, and whatever's works organically, as I suppose has been a hot topic for today. I just want to, before we jump into a couple of breakout rooms, again, good opportunity for you guys to have a quick chat with each other, learn more about each other. I just want to say thank you to our guests today, and thanks everyone for coming. I just want to say, please share with your network. We've got some great events coming up, and some pretty exciting news to share on our LinkedIn and Meetup. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, give us a follow on LinkedIn if you want to stay up to date. And just as a topic for our breakout rooms, feel free to obviously introduce yourselves and have a chat about what works for you and your organization in terms of customer success and selling. But with that ado, give me one moment. I'll put everyone into breakout rooms. I'll give you about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll give you a warning. And then at the end of that time, we'll end the call. But it's been great having you all here today, and hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.